Every man's TRT journey is fairly similar. I'm going to speak in generalities that cover the highlights. Don't get bogged down in those weeds. The brushstrokes are broad. Usually somewhere around age 35 plus, guys start feeling off. These aren't lazy guys, often hard-charging guys, stressful lives and jobs, family men with a wife, kids, and responsibilities. They notice they're putting on a bit of weight, but it's not ridiculous, and they decide to get more serious about the gym or exercise and their diet, and this keeps much at bay for a long time. This often actually improves things, and sometimes by a lot at this stage, which lasts usually 3 to 5 years. Then they begin to notice the creep again. As hard-charging guys, they know that they are just being babies and double down on hard, but find that doubling down isn't working. The extra gear they always used to have doesn't seem to be there any longer, and for a period of time, the extra gear will occasionally rear its head and fool a guy, making him think it's back, but it's not. It eventually disappears. This is usually the point when the weight begins to slide again. It's also a common time for many guys to just begin the giving up process, embrace middle age, and getting old and out of shape and fat. The guy eventually moves on to TRT, doesn't find the giving up satisfactory at all. He begins to try longer rest periods. He begins looking into why he's feeling blah, with low energy, low motivation, low libido, no gains in the gym, and long recoveries. He's even mildly depressed. And weight at this point may be sliding up even faster than is comfortable, and he knows it. Maybe his wife or kids have said something. Maybe he has had to buy new-sized pants for the first time in a decade. He's not stupid and correctly identifies that he's having symptoms of low testosterone, and he spends the next 18 to 24 months reading, watching videos, and trying supplements. The Tongkat, Fedogia, fenugreek, tribulus, pine pollen. Maybe he finds the Peters and goes ham on pregnenolone. He probably sees his regular doctor, who argues about checking his testosterone, finally dies grudgingly, and then refuses to do anything about a low number because it's not low enough. They might also be reading online scolds about giving in to treatment with testosterone when all they really need to do is be a better man. It's not a medical issue, it's a moral one. And the reason that testosterone isn't naturally high is because they are too fat, don't eat good, don't sleep good, and won't manage their stress. As if quitting their jobs, not making the mortgage, and feeding the kids is an option. They might see an influencer who lives on the beach, single, no kids, sleeps when he wants, works out when he wants, eats fresh local meat, fruit, and veggies only, swims in the ocean every day, getting that grounding and that magnesium, high natural T, looked great. If only. They get told that once you are taking testosterone that you can never stop, which isn't true, but the ignorant and the liars seem very persuasive at times. So they stew, just cook in it. But finally they get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they find a doc who is facile with testosterone in the man with symptomatically low levels. They reach out. They pull that trigger. And they don't realize how down, bad they were, or how awful they felt until they start feeling better. And sometimes it'll take a month or two to notice a huge difference, while some guys notice improvements in a few days. The life is changed. He feels confident again and strong. He loses weight. He makes gains in the gym. Him and his wife get friendly again, regularly. That's the arc. And if you're wondering about it reaching out to a doc who is familiar, you're not a bad guy trying to get good. No moral failings. You're a regular guy that stress, life, and age put into a state. You don't need to stay there. You don't. Please don't. Take it back today. And that is an essay by my friend, CoffeeBlackMD, a pulmonologist and ICU doc who is building a side practice. It's going to be an episode you will enjoy. Let's get into it. Good morning, CoffeeBlackMD.
Morning, sir.
Welcome.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
So, a lot's been going on in the last year. You've been a busy guy. And can you catch us up a little bit? How has been your concierge practice online, and how have you grown it?
Well, so let's see here. In the last years, I think when we last talked, was that last July even?
I think it was exactly September.
Was it September? Okay, so we had just kind of gotten things started back then. I think now we probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 400 active clients. Most of these have come in just by word of mouth. Kind of, word of mouth locally, as well as I do collect a few clients from Twitter who just can't seem to find local help. So same thing with I've been collecting a few docs from around the country, because it is interesting, because when a doc needs TRT, it's kind of like, well, what do I do? Who do I go to? And it can be tough to find someone to write you a prescription for a very legitimate reason. Just because I think most physicians these days just aren't comfortable dealing with testosterone replacement, because we were trained to. In fact, we were trained that it was nonsense for the most part, and that if you needed to use anything like that, these patients should go to the endocrines. And the endocrines hate this stuff. They don't want to deal with it at all, unless it's like, you've got some big prolactoma or something, some sort of like.
Well, let's kind of tease that out a little bit, because I think that's an important point of resistance. And so what do you think? So number one is the training aspect. That's very important.
Yep.
As a lot of us are not exposed in residency to like managing this over a long term. But one thing that I have heard, people mention is from the cardiology community. And so could you address that point of resistance of low dose TRT and how it affects lipid panel over the, maybe 12 months?
So it's a good question, and it's sort of a common mythos. At least this was, part of my training, that, TRT caused guys to have heart attacks and strokes and caused prostate cancer. This was the meme. And that would have been, I was in training in 2008, 2013 for residency. I guess it was 3 years, right? And, I think since that time, there's been a lot of data that has come out. And I think some of the studies were actually trying to prove the fact that testosterone was bad for you. And it turns out that if you take guys who are low, clinically low, and you give them testosterone, they actually do better than guys, even from cardiovascular metrics. They do even better than guys that actually have that were low but didn't get put onto testosterone. I strongly suspect that may be related to the estrogen. Estrogen is kind of the magic compound. That's where the art is in any of this TRT or HRT at the end of the day. And again, so furthermore, those studies have shown that like guys who've had coronary disease, who have low testosterone and are put on, do not have higher rates of repeat strokes or heart attacks. They put to bed the myth that it was causing prostate cancer. It is not causing prostate cancer. Now, it can be fuel on certain prostate cancers, right? Because some are going to be androgen sensitive, which is one of the reasons why the urologist will, completely shut down any testosterone production often with uh, with guys who have prostate cancer, during the treatment phases of things. But now they've also done a study putting guys onto testosterone after having prostate cancer, and they don't see more prostate cancer showing up. So I think the whole it causes strokes, it causes heart attacks, it causes blood clots, it causes, prostate cancer has all been put to bed, and there's not a whole lot left to complain about. Um, one of the cardiologists I talked to, is an electrophysiologist, said, well, that study that showed that it didn't cause heart attacks said it may be associated with higher rates of atrial fibrillation. But that wasn't what the study was powered to look at, right? It was just kind of like some statistical shit that they threw against the wall and tried to find something.
Okay.
So, but there is a correlation there, and it's one of those things you do want to maybe talk to somebody, especially guys who are getting a little older, right? Hey, this may be something we'll have to watch out for. Um, but at the same time, I don't know how that changes or really does much with management, right? Because if you're low, well, I mean, like here's what I'm saying. In the context of anything else, if you're like an older patient, and you develop atrial fibrillation, the setting of all the other things we're treating you for, we don't be like, stop your treatment for anything else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You then start treating the atrial fibrillation. So,
Okay, so in terms of your practice and management, could you define the lab values that you consider low? And then how do you define low dose TRT? Like what dosage and how frequency and that thing?
more good questions. Um, so low is going to be is So I think that it's always important to remember that when we're talking about lab values, we're talking about a statistical uh, uh, set of numbers, right, over a population of some kind. And so when they tell you here's the quote normal ranges, what they're saying is that these are the ranges where we find people statistically most often, but it doesn't tell you that those are actually normal for that person. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you can have a guy with a testosterone of say 500 who feels totally fine. But if you've got a guy who's got a testosterone of 500, but he's down in three domains, and I consider three domains, which would be the first would be kind of like your cognitive, like mental health kind of stuff. So are you motivated? Are you feeling like your mood's down? Are you feeling like that you've got um sort of like depressed mood, low motivation, those sorts of things. If that's down, plus libido is down, that'd be your second domain. If in the third domain would be like things like recovery from exercise. So like if you've been in the gym like every day, doing it hard, and it's you're just not making any progress at all, that's another reason. But also maybe you have a big hard day at the gym and now you're just wrecked for a week. These are, these are all reasons to be like, okay, we're down in three domains. So if you're down in three domains at 500, I'm probably going to try on some testosterone, even though that's not what the quote industry standard is. Industry standard, what I would say is that most endocrines would be like, oh, okay, if you're below 300, you should be on, we'll grudgingly give you some treatment. I think same thing with primary care docs. So, um, but then they just kind of don't know how to run the protocols very well and how to follow up and manage, which sort of surprises me. And um, we talk about low dose TRT. I mean, what I think about is not really low or high dose so much as like what's the dose you need to get basically the top end of the normal range, because that's where you find the guys stop having their symptoms, and that top end of the normal range is also a nice place to be because then you don't run into side effects. So you don't see a lot of problems with your lipids, you don't run into blood pressure issues, you're not getting into hematocrit issues. And I start most guys at about 120 milligrams a week. You recheck levels in about 6 weeks to get things dialed in. But after that, most guys feel really good right there. You nudge it up a little bit, nudge it down a little bit. Pay attention to the estrogen. But the industry I should say industry standard. It's just kind of awful. But what was going on for so long was that they would give a guy 200 milligrams of testosterone a week, and then usually like a half milligram to a milligram of an anastrozole, which is kind of like the I don't want to deal with this very badly way of throwing stuff at guys. Be like, here's your testosterone, and here's this thing, so that I don't have to look at your estrogen ever. And it's a recipe for having too much testosterone, which then causes their blood counts to go up or their blood pressure, and then the it's a good reason for then the doctor who prescribed 200 a week, like, oh, this isn't working, right? It's
Okay.
just it's crazy making frustrating. And then guys run around feeling awful because their estrogen's like less than 15. Like, why am I moody? Why do I not want to have sex? Well, it's because some doctor gave you a medicine that crushed your estrogen, so that's why. So it's just
So,
not been terribly thoughtful.
can you explain like what are the consequences of mismanaged estrogen levels on people that are on this approximate dose?
Um, so you're on 200, and if you just run the estrogen to the ground, again, you aren't going to have your high estrogen symptoms, but you'll have the low estrogen symptoms. And the question is like, well, what's the problem with guys and low estrogen? Well, I mean, we do get moody. Okay, so estrogen's important for men within a nice little range. Because if it goes too low, you get moody. You don't have any interest in sex. Because it is interesting that the psychological part of sex seems to come from the androgens, but the physical part, like your body saying, I'm interested or I'm ready to have or I want to have sex, seems to come from the estrogen.
Okay.
So if the estrogen isn't in like a nice, healthier range in men, then they're just not interested in sex, despite having lots of, testosterone around, which most people think, well, that would make you just be like crazy. And it doesn't turn you into a sex maniac, right? But if the estrogen runs too high, then the equipment doesn't work. That's another problem.
I see.
The estrogen goes too high in men, they will get the sort of the similar things that we tend to associate estrogen with in women who are on their cycles, where they we see them get a little bit more moody, maybe hunger cravings, certain things like that, water weight gain, a little bit bloated. So when guys sort of start reporting that, you're like, okay, well, that's probably the estrogen, and you'll run into this sometimes even with the lower doses I start with in guys who are a little older, because you aromatize a bit more aggressively as you age, and guys who have a little bit more adiposity to them. So, one of the cool things about testosterone in the studies is that if you take fat guys who are low and you give them testosterone, you make them less fat. That's cool, but you have to just manage the estrogen, because they will aggressively aromatize through the adipose tissues, and so a lot of times you just have to then approach that as you need to. But if you get a guy starting at 120, he's like putting a little bit of water weight, well, you got to back him off. You back down maybe to like so 120 a week. I might just go to 80 a week and just say, look, we're starting here, we're going to start low, go slow, we're going to see what we need to do. From my perspective, the number one first thing you do when the estrogen goes too high is you decrease the dose. You don't add in an aromatase inhibitor.
Okay.
Now, and I can go into aromatase inhibitors just a little bit here, just a little sideline. So aromatase inhibitors are medications that were developed for breast cancer. And these meds we use to just shut down the enzyme that converts testosterone to estrogen. And so it's one way to go after it, but you're adding more complexity and potentially other complications from these aromatase inhibitors, especially anastrozole, which is sort of like I'd say that's the one that's most commonly used by most clinics. And it's kind of a dirtier drug. It'll mess with your lipids. Um, and so sometimes I do wonder too if I get these guys who are like on both these compounds and they're saying, oh, the testosterone screwed up your lipids, when it probably may have actually been majoritively the anastrozole.
I see.
So, in my practice, I like to use exemestane, which is a different, or aromasin might be the name a lot of people are familiar with that from. And so, these are drugs that I remember learning about in like medical school, but never touched at all until I got out to do this practice. But the reason I like to use exemestane is that I'm able to actually really dial things in a lot better, because it actually is a suicide inhibitor. of the aromatase. So you can actually get to a nice little figure out where the dose is to get a nice, this is how we're doing it like every 6 days or every 7 days. This is the dose. And then this keeps us right at this nice steady state because whenever you take it, it shuts down all the aromatase indefinitely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
Whereas the,
let me summarize
yeah, go
for
on.
people that are kind of new to the topic. So, aromatase is the enzyme which is naturally found in adipose tissue that would convert androgens or converts testosterone into estrogens. And aromasin. So, I want to make sure I understand this. It is a suicide inhibitor. So, how is that different than, like a competitive inhibitor?
Right.
What does that do?
So like for an anastrozole, for instance. So while that medicine is active, it is blocking the aromatase. But like once it's been metabolized off, you still have the exact same amount of aromatase. You have say the aromatase pool, right? You've blocked some of the pool, but like now you've taken it off. The pool's still there, hasn't gone anywhere. You haven't done anything to actually address the pool, and so you'll actually get rebound estrogen issues. And so people like scratch their head, like, oh, I'm low, I'm high, I'm low, I'm high. Like, well, because of the way you're trying to manage this, right?
Okay.
It's so because it comes on, oh, I feel better. Comes off, oh, I feel like bad crap again. And so if you take so if you take something like examestane, we're like, okay, we're permanently shutting down. Like, I mean, I don't, there's no like great way to like I guess at least that I know of right now to objectively like quantify like 6.25 milligrams will do this or like 12.5 milligrams will do this, but it does basically shut down like so a percentage of the pool. Sort of the way I think about it, there's this pool of it, and now I'm just taking like 10-20% of it off the game board. It's gone. Now let's see where now if we do this on a regular basis, now where does the estrogen settle out as? That makes sense. It allows you to like just make things steady.
Okay. So
I don't,
to
I don't know if
just
I'm
get
I don't know if I'm communicating
no, that
a
that was
clinician's way of
helpful.
thinking about this. Yeah,
So basically, you're this is a more dialed in drug, and it allows you to avoid the clinical symptoms of like rebound.
correct.
Okay.
And but that's only if I have to reach for it. Again, I'm of the opinion that the first step is to decrease the dose all the time. As a I come from a internal medicine background, and I really feel like if I have to add medicines to keep you on medicines, I've lost cool points as a doctor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Less is more.
Now, every once in a while, yeah, you do. Let's say I get a guy and I've got him like, listen, I've got your testosterone. It needs to be based upon your total levels and the way you're feeling, but your estrogen's kind of causing us some problems. There's no room to go down on rate of testosterone without maybe running into some testosterone symptoms. So in that case, yes, we're gonna use a little bit of a aromatase inhibitor to see if we can like settle this out and steady it out. But most of the time, as long as you don't run the testosterone dose too high, most guys do not have estrogen issues. So
Okay. So so before you started the online consultant practice, were you also having like a subset of your clinic patients that you were managing on TRT?
no, I do not do this in my employed um, job. So I'm also a pulmonary and critical care doc. Um, I do not manage any kind of hormones out of that clinic. I don't mention any of this, obviously, at work. It's not like, I mean, there's ethical issues as well, right? But that's my side thing. If anyone wants to come to me from that, they can like look me out and search me out. And that's part of the reason why I kind of do it the way I do it. I want people coming to me because they want to come to me. I don't want to like we've not done like say a lot of marketing. We've done zero marketing actually. I don't want there to be like this big marketing campaign. Oh, come to this guy. He's the candy store. He'll hand out your stuff. That's not me. That's not what's going to happen.
I see.
I I'm really interested in like we really kind of like our current model, which is going to be obviously slower to any kind of like um slower to any kind of I guess income. Let's put it that way. That might replace what I'm doing now with my employed job, and maybe even let me do this full time. But it also it's like okay, this whenever you show up to the clinic, it's like okay, you walked to this path, you did this journey. It's like okay, I heard this clinic is up on the top of this mountain. Maybe this is the analogy is a little bit too far fetched, but just like and I walked this path and I went up these stairs and I like climbed this little wall and I got up here and I'm like and I found these guys and I'm like okay, you found me, let's help you out. Does that make sense? I
Nice.
don't know what to do. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a unique position to be in, but I understand the pressures that you're under. But the question that I was getting at, I'm genuinely curious as to the long term. So, like, you know how some drugs, uh, you can you develop a tolerance to it, or it kind of peters out. So if you're say 50 years old, understandably, if this treatment is making you feel amazing on a consistent basis, and you're not having negative side effects from it, naturally you would want to continue this long term. Do you notice tolerance to TRT and requiring higher doses over time, and does that cause problems?
I would say it's probably more the opposite in many ways. Because I at least this has been sort of my experience with guys as they age. Because I've got a few clients, a very like I may only have like two or three in their low 70s, um, maybe 20 in their 60s. And when you start getting older, you got to start like watching how hard you can push things. And a lot of times, the right answer is a lower dose of testosterone in these guys.
Interesting.
Um, uh, and the other thing too is I always tell these guys that are older. I said, look, I said we can try this. I'm going to start low. We're gonna, on all my clients, we're drawing labs on a regular basis. So like it's, you have to have labs every 3 to 4 months regardless, just to make sure nothing's getting funny. Um, but the as far as I going with this, so the but as far as like developing tolerance, I haven't seen that. It seems like like whatever, again, there's gonna be some variation. Like if I put like 100 guys on 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, there's gonna be some variation in kind of how they respond to it. But for that guy, it should respond about the way it responds every single time. This has been my experience so far. Now, with that said, as you age, you're gonna be a little bit more aggressively aromatizing for reasons that I'm not entirely sure, what's kind of going on with the genetics or the epigenetics that sort of like upregulates that estrogen production. I do think that part of estrogen production, at least in in the species, exists to protect our cardiovascular system. And so some of that extra estrogen is a little bit compensatory. It's okay, but again, if you've got a kind of an older guy starting to put a little bit of like water weight and stuff, you're like, okay, this means that you're probably too sensitive with the estrogen at this dose. We just back off.
Okay.
Does that answer the question the way you wanted me to?
Yeah, that's
Sir? Okay,
helpful.
sweet.
So, so speaking of converters, yeah, I mean, you know how so part of the art and craft of medicine is, the long-term experience managing different types of patients, including different ethnicities and different racial groups, like, Native Americans, have much more toxicity from ethanol, alcohol
Right.
drinking, and and same thing with Asians. Now, do you find that certain demographics, ethnic groups, are higher converters?
It's a good question that I don't think I can actually probably speak to, um, I guess in any sort of like definitive fashion, just because my patient population tends to be largely Caucasian right now, based upon where I'm located,
Okay.
um, Caucasian and Latino,
Okay.
and I've not seen like big variations between, say, those groups. I have had a couple of Eastern Asian clients. So we'll call that, let's say, Japan or Korea or Chinese, right? So that sort of like that, um, I guess, line of the ethnicities or races. And I've seen that it's a very limited experience, but it was like, wow, these people, these guys seem to respond very aggressively to the testosterone as far as like how much total testosterone they had based upon the dose I gave them, and then kind of what it did to the estrogen. And it was interesting because the estrogen went pretty high in some of these guys and they felt fine. So it's like, that's interesting. So
Okay.
again, it's one of those things that I don't know that I have a complete. I can't really speak to it, much more than just those little anecdotes that I've seen so far.
Okay.
I've got I don't think I have a single African American client right now.
Okay.
So, and I think it's just kind of like where I'm located and kind of like who kind of follows me on Twitter and things. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. So now let's talk a little bit more about the mechanics of starting this type of thing. So I remember I saw that you had recommended on your timeline one of your, I think basically an e-commerce consultant, a guy who was uh, managing the back end of your website and things of that nature. So could you like explain us to us like a 5-year-old, the parts of running the online business that someone who's never done it before would run into problems, yeah, as your client base increases.
well, okay, yeah. So, well, there's a lot there to unpack. Um, it's the things that you're learning along the way, obviously, and the things that we're still learning. That like, there's just no way to kind of teach it except for get into it. I mean, you have to have some sort of client management system, and most of them in healthcare, people call that a EHR.
Okay.
Um, you know, Getting an EHR sort of off the shelf is one option. That whole kind of like industry, I find it gross because they just, I mean, just they crank up the prices and here's the service contracts and so you never actually have anything. You're just like renting this little space on this EHR essentially,
Yeah. Well,
and you're at kind of their mercy and like, oh, we can customize anything for like an extra $1 billion.
yeah.
So you're just like,
Yep.
and so
You
look,
got
I
the
I
hospitals by the balls.
and and if you're trying to run like a practice where you actually need to use insurance and kind of connect with Medicare and all the local pharmacies, that's going to be the way to go. And so when we looked into those, we're like, but listen, we have a cash-based business. We're not like actual clinic anymore. Like we do medical things, but I'm like I don't know, I'm like a tire store, right? You come in, you give me cash, I give you the thing, right? So it's like we aren't like doing the we aren't like billing insurance, we aren't running through any there's no Medicare Medicaid type of thing going on. It's just it's sort of an honest cash pay system, so you have to have a system that allows you to keep track of that stuff. And so we're like, okay, we've got this. So we did find something. We kept track of clients, but like, but listen, but we got to have a place where we can document things, where we can communicate, where we can keep track of like, you know, the billing going out, the billing coming in, and a lot of your client management systems, I'll refer to it as a CRM, which is kind of like a non-healthcare associated like EHR. Think about it like that. Like if you run a tire business, like I said, you'll have a list of your clients, right? You'll have a database. It's just a database. This is my demographics of the people who do business with us, right? And so we're like, okay, so what we need to do is we need to try to, we were like, if we can talk to someone this really simply for us, because what we need is just like something that keeps track of our clients, that can send out our billings, that can track that stuff, allows us to communicate with them in some place where we can just keep their labs and notes. So
Okay. How
really
long were you
pretty,
doing
like,
that? How long were you doing that on your own? Like when you were small? I mean,
we were doing that well, because we talked to September. So we've been using this same kind of system, like this. I mean, we've been doing this for like like the last year or so, but it's been an interesting journey. So we had met a gal who developed our website for us, the initial website we had, and she had said like, well, I could maybe build something for you guys, and we're like, okay, cool. And I won't get into the weeds on all how that went south on us. Unfortunately, this is the tuition that you learn about in the university of trying to run a business.
okay.
But she tried to end up scamming us.
Oh man.
Um, Ended up actually like throwing a nuisance lawsuit at us when things didn't work out. I mean, basically, she wanted to try to start a software company with us, where she would be the person who was going to be like developing and managing this new EMR thing that she was trying to build for us. But she was building it off an open source platform, so there was no way we could have ever like even taken that to anywhere. Because like when you use open source stuff, that's part of the deal is that you don't you don't sell this, you don't license it, you can't market it, kind of thing. And so. we had started with the thing that she'd put together. It was working pretty well for us. We transferred everything from our old system into this one, and then that relationship went tits up. She locked us out. We lost probably 100 clients. I mean, it just like it was nuts,
Wow.
nuts. And we learned hard lessons about like how you need to like put together contracts for people, how you, because there was a lot of stuff where it was just kind of like, oh, we're kind of cool, we think we're working together, and like we always paid her what she asked us to, what she invoiced us. But then at some point when she's like, oh, you guys owe us like, and she's like, you owe us like $1 million, we're like, because this is what came out after we decided, we're like, we're not going into business with you to do a software company.
Oh, I see.
And she's like, "Oh, well, you owe me like 150. You owe me like $150 an hour for like 3 months at 40 hours a week." And we're like, "No, we don't. You didn't. That wasn't part of our agreement and our deal." And it was,
Wow. This is really important,
yeah.
actually.
Well, it
Because,
is.
you
It
know,
is.
without a technical background, I mean, there's bad people out there, or there's people that they want to hear something when the reality is something different, and then they're convinced that their thinking is correct. That's
The other
unfortunate.
the other thing, especially working with some certain contractors and things, just look into them, check out their background, see what's going on. If we'd have done that on this gal, we probably wouldn't have gotten into business with her
So
because
was this
there was.
person, so did you find this engineer locally, or were they online?
We did. We did. It was with we gotten the connection from one of our local supplement stores guy that he was using her for web-based stuff. And he said, "Oh, I've got this gal. She can do a website for you." That's how it started. It was like we just needed the website. And so and so when everything went south, our old website went down. I mean, she took everything with it, and it was just like, and then and so you get to the point where like, okay, like how much money do I want to spend on lawyers to try to like undo all this stuff and it just became so disgusting. We were like, okay, we're forgetting this, we're going to start this new thing. And ran into a really good developer on Twitter, which is Twitter's great for networking. And if people don't understand the power of that platform, like you're not just showing up to like post memes and talk shit at politicians, like there's
Yeah.
actually like a real um ability to network with cool people who are smart, who know things. If they can't maybe help you out necessarily with like necessarily with like a business thing, but like they have that wisdom. Like, hey, here's some ideas or some things that I did. And so there's just a huge wealth of information there if you just kind of hang out and just look around. But back to sort of like so now we're developing this new CRM, which will eventually turn into an EHR with um, uh, protected documentation side of things with account login for our clients who can then. So then I think we're all up to the sort of like the industry standards for a clinic.
Okay.
So you've got the protected stuff here. Clients can log in. Um, but then it also works for the business side of things because that's what we learned trying to do things the other way. We tried to do things like we tried to do the EHR side of things first with the other one we were trying to do, and it's weird because you can't like it's hard to back engineer the business side of it because all these EHRs are like sort of set up like, oh, send this to insurance, send this to insurance, send this to insurance, right? We're not sending it to insurance. I'm emailing you an invoice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you
And so,
guys, are you set up to accept health savings accounts?
um, so here's what I would say like formally no. Okay, so I don't, but the HSAs can pay for medications and labs.
Okay.
So some of them might pay for my consults, some might not.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of clients that do use their HSA
So for
or
somebody, okay, so basically it's a tire shop. It's a cash business. Your body is the vehicle. Your tires
yep.
a little bald, they're run down a little bit. You need some new tires, and you need to get them rotated and balanced and aligned on a regular basis. So, if this is my car, I budget, maybe uh, a couple thousand at most a year. I mean, I have a truck, so the maintenance is a little more. So,
Right.
so for the average American guy, householder, family, provider, um, median income in the U.S. right now is about 65,000 a year. Let's say you maybe an older demographic, maybe a little bit more than that. So how much, if someone is serious, like say someone's 50 years old, they're starting to have symptoms of low T. Um, for somebody, how much should somebody budget from their annual income to pay for services like yours?
It's a good question too. I think that kind of industry standard is around $200 to $300 a month. Um, Most clinics and most of your national chains will do this on kind of like a subscription model. And there's business cycle reasons for wanting to have like, a subscription. On our end, we feel like it's more, I don't know if it's honest, that we just kind of do pay as you go. And we understand that that will have some additional upfront costs with like consult, baby labs. I don't ever make anyone get labs with us, but we're priced competitively. Um, for the panels that I want, because I want guys to get their, and gals, I want them to get their stuff with me because it's easy for me to see it. But I never make anyone get labs with us. So, but you have to have labs. So that probably is, going to be 200 whenever you get labs. Medication costs, like basic TRT out of my clinic, I will sell you a bottle of testosterone, 2,000 milligrams. That will last you probably 4 months on the dose that I typically prescribe. So when you look at the recurring labs, because I do need labs in 6 weeks again after I get you on. So again, that's another kind of like little insult to the injury you just had on the payment. But it's the only way to make sure I got you dialed in. We're not seeing anything like immediately wrong with your labs. Like, I don't know, I think conceivably like maybe you're a hyper responder, you're a hematocrit or something. I'm like, whoa, brother, listen, we gotta think about, our dosing here and like, make sure we're backing off. Do we need to consider like more frequent dosing, or do we need to think about donating some blood, these kinds of things? Did it completely tank your HDL? Because I don't want you on testosterone if your HDL is gonna be 20. That's dangerous, right? So I'm saying that, so like I need to see kind of like immediately, are you responding well initially, but it also gives me what your total testosterone is at 6 weeks, so then I can dial in what I'm dosing you at. Because everyone kind of has a little bit of a different response on how the testosterone gets released from the tissues from the ester. And so you just kind of so that's where you try to find the dialed in dose. Okay, so every 3 or 4 months for the first year and a half, I got to have labs. And if we're stable after 18 months, probably twice a year we'll need labs. And then you just order meds whenever you need to order meds. I always, 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 always recommend testicular support. So if I put you on testosterone, nothing else, your body will decide to stop making any of its own, which is fine. It doesn't shut down permanently. Those are rare, almost like mythic cases, to be honest with you. If you take most men, put them on testosterone, don't give them anything to support the testicles, take them off in 6 months, they will come back in 3 or 4 months to about where they were when they got started. That's the natural way this normally happens. It just takes a while for it to kind of kick back in because the feedback loops are what they are. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
But because of that, I like to make sure that your testicles are supported, and there's a few different ways we can do that. And so that will also, incur some additional cost. But I think when you average it out, we're looking at, let's say, probably $200 to $250 a month averaged out for the year, first year. Probably a little bit less than that the second year, because I don't charge another like $400 consult to, year to year to year. You do have to see me once a year.
Okay.
And the price on the return visit, at least that once per year visit, we're still discussing what that's going to be, but it can't be nothing. But I don't think it should be the same amount as the initial consult. I don't know. It's
Okay.
funny because like as the doctor, there's things like I'm so sympathetic about um like costs to my clients, right? And like like quote selling meds in a console. Like it's like I'm always trying to get people the best deals
Yeah.
on everything I can. And for some people, if they have any comfort, say like with research peptides, which are actually right now very interesting in their quality, as long as you get the right source, you can get things like HCG at a research peptide, a good research, a good reputable research peptide place that will be just as good as the pharmaceutical versions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But
So,
some people are just like, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. So basically finish this point. But some people do want, hey, I want the stuff that's pharmaceutical. That's fine.
okay.
You know, just it kind of is what it is. But I'm trying to like help people get to like wherever their comfort levels is. And so,
Okay. So let me, so about 200 to 300 a month baseline. And then
yeah, and
how
that's
much?
pretty standard.
Yeah.
I was gonna
But
say, like, if you look at it,
is that
I'm sorry, what was
extra?
that?
So the 2000 milligram vial of
Yep.
testosterone that lasts about 4 months, that's separate, right?
Yeah, that you buy that separate. That's I mean, I sell that right now for 150, and people would be like, "Oh, well, I can get that much cheaper underground." Well, then get it underground. Or they can say, "Well, I got a good RX coupon. I can go get it for $45." Well, then go get it there.
Okay.
Built into my prices are my rent, right? The lights, my nurses, right? So it's you're paying for medical managed TRT, and so there's going to be built-in things into the pricing structure. But most of your national chains are running like almost 300 milligram, oh, not $300 a month right now. So you look at like say one of the big national chains called Maximus. I've never heard of them, but Maximus Tribe, and they will do just enclomiphene only. So enclomiphene is an estrogen blocker. It's been used in fertility. It will increase your testosterone. It has some other issues with it that, if you want to get into, we can, and sort of my thoughts on it long term. But they charge guys $350 a month just for like, it's not even testosterone. It's, and so again, I'm not here to try to say anything bad about Maximus necessarily, even though I disagree with that style of management. I'm just saying, but this is kind of what guys are looking at going out there. I've not looked at the, I think Game Day, Ageless Male are all in that range. Those are some very like national chains that people have heard about. They're right around that 200 the $200 to $300 a month dosing, or not dosing, sorry, pricing. And there are clinics, I'll put that in quotes a little bit, where if you want stuff, you don't have to see a doc. You show up with cash, they'll just give you stuff. And that kind of horrifies me because I think that the whole industry right now, I'll put it that way, as it exists, is just ripe for someone with a clipboard to come in and just start, I don't know, be like, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong. And so for us as a clinic, our goal is that we want to be standing when the dust finally settles, doing everything correctly. So we want things to be right and tight. I don't know. Is that answering the question? Or am I off on
Yeah,
a tangent too
yeah,
far?
that answers the question. And I just wanted to clarify for
Mhm.
the testicular support piece. Can you
Yep,
elaborate on your
of
top
course.
3 to 5 medications you use for that?
So we like to start our protocols with enclomiphene twice a week that we use the day after you inject your testosterone. So enclomiphene is a estrogen blocker, and by blocker I mean it blocks receptors. Okay, um, it was developed as a fertility drug. It never did get FDA approval, but it's considered like this kind of like this weird orphan drug at this point, and you can compound it, you can prescribe it. It's overall very safe. You can get some sort of funky um, cognitive or psychological stuff from it sometimes. Some guys don't feel really great sexually with it. Um, and it's more like just kind of just this kind of aren't interested because you're blocking the estrogens. There's no good receptor tissue mapping on it. So we know it works in the brain because that's how it works, which is cool. But we're not really sure where else it's blocking in the body. It could be blocking in the bones and causing perhaps deficiencies there, although there's no data to support that right now. Let me put that out there. I'm just throwing things out there for one of the reasons why I don't like using it indefinitely every single day. However, a tactical use of it twice a week to block estrogen when it's peaking after you've injected testosterone will then like block the signal to the brain. The brain says, "Oh, I don't see any hormones. Let's tell the boys downstairs to, make a bit." And so the idea is to keep the lights on at the factory and have the machinery running a bit. So most guys do pretty well with just the enclomiphene twice a week. It's also, I feel like, the most affordable option. It's a capsule, so it's less, one less stick because everything else you got to inject again.
Okay.
Um, the industry standard though would be something like HCG. That was what was sort of like the gold standard, developed, in the 80s, at least the 90s for sure. And what HCG is, it's okay when you take a pregnancy test. It's the thing that makes the dipstick positive, right? So it's the thing that tells women they're pregnant because women make a ton of it. We extract that from women's urine and we inject it. Wow, why are we doing that? Well, it binds very, very strongly to the luteinizing hormone receptor in the testicles. The luteinizing hormone receptor in the testicles is then going to have your testicles making more testosterone. When you have the testosterone being made, so then the machinery's working. The lights are on at the factory. The thing with the HCG though that makes it a little bit complicated is that back in 2017, the pharmaceutical companies got HCG called a biologic. So they said, nope, you can't compound this if it's a biologic because they saw that there was potential to make some money. But then they ran up the price so it's a lot. So in order to get, like, let's say about 3 to 4 months of HCG pharmaceutical, it's probably $500 to $600 to my client. Whereas you can get the HCG from the research peptides place for the same amount for probably about $120. So that's the reason why if I have clients who are comfortable going that route and they want to do HCG, or we think they need to do HCG because the enclomiphene isn't working the way we want it to, then HCG that's sort of like the thoughts on HCG. I wish I could honestly probably it'd be easiest probably just to have guys on HCG all the time, but the price is a definitely consideration. So there's one more med I can use called gonadorelin. Gonadorelin is a peptide that will mimic gonadotropin releasing hormone in the brain. So that signal then tells the brain to send luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone to the testicles to do the things that we want it to do, make sperm and testosterone. Now, gonadorelin was developed as more of a diagnostic tool than it was like a therapy. And you got to be careful with the dosing because if you hit the gonadotropin releasing hormone receptors too hard, they downregulate fast. So part of the issue with using gonadorelin is that you have to make sure your dosing is right. So you kind of want to ping the brain once a day with just a little dose. So you ping the brain's like, oh, send some signals, it sends the signals. That tends to work really pretty well. But if you dose it too high over a period of time, you will downregulate receptors, and then people will be like, this isn't working anymore because you went too aggressive with it. So, sometimes online you'll hear guys say like, oh, gonadorelin doesn't work. Well, it doesn't probably the way you're dosing it. So
I guess that makes sense
those kind
physiologically, right? Because
of, Mhm.
GnRH is one of, I mean, that's a pulsatile, you know,
Correct.
fashion. So
Correct. And so some people are like, well, are you dosing the gonadorelin like every 20 minutes or blah, blah, blah? You're like, no, you don't have to. Like you're missing the point. You're not trying to recreate the natural, like everyday, like if I inject you with HCG, for instance, at 250 international units, that's not natural. What you have this circulating pregnancy hormone you just injected yourself at just like at 7 times the binding efficiency of luteinizing hormone. Like that's like normal. I'm just saying. So sometimes it's kind of funny when you start getting into like it's not natural conversations, with people like objecting to anything you're doing. But again, and from my mind as a doc, I'm like, listen, we're trying to, again, factory lights on, machinery running. So what do I need to do to make that happen? A signal once a day is going to be plenty. It almost always is. So
okay. So, all right. So that gives me a pretty good idea of how you manage these patients over time, new clients, maintenance clients. Now, earlier in the conversation, we talked about, an average overweight 50-year-old man And if all you do is start them on the TRT protocol, including testicular support, the first thing that's going to happen after a few months is they will lose weight. So obviously, this patient population, they want to lose weight. And I know you have clinical experience with Ozempic and related drugs. Um, how much of your patient population wants to do both at the same time, and what are your thoughts on that?
Um, so I do have a few clients that prefer the semaglutide, which is that's the active ingredient in Wegovy and Ozempic. Um, I don't like it as much because it's basically a pure GLP-1 A. And when I say A, I mean agonist. So it's an activator, right, of that receptor, and it's really strongly active there, which means that it basically slows down the digestive tract, right? And that's how you're improving your caloric intake because you're not hungry because things have slowed down, but it also leads to the classic gastrointestinal side effects that we've all heard about, right? And so I prefer to use Tirzepatide in clients as much as possible. Tirzepatide has about 20% the activity at the GLP-1 receptor. So it's not zero there, but I feel like it's just enough that like gets you what you need. But it also binds the GIP receptor, which is another hunger signaling a pathway. So I've found that it's a lot more of a smoother, I'm just not hungry without having any GI issues. And I have been using these medications in patients very successfully on testosterone to lose weight and improve body composition. Because one of the things we're also looking for, right, especially when you're using the GLP-1 As, what's the big complaint everyone has, or that you'll hear from anyone who just wants to be a contrarian on, is, oh, you're losing all this muscle. Well, if you actually work out, take testosterone, and use tirzepatide, you're not losing a lot of muscle. You're just losing body fat. And the cool thing about the tirzepatide, or any of the GLP-1s, is that they make you more sensitive to insulin. So when you're on anabolics, okay, which testosterone is, it binds to the androgen receptors in the muscles. And if you've been using them, those muscles want what? They want nutrients. So you've set up an environment where now you're more insulin sensitive, and your muscles want to use the nutrients that are coming in. So more of those nutrients are going to get partitioned into the muscles rather than the liver or the body fat.
Okay. So so make sure I understand this.
Mhm.
So when people talk about the Ozempic or Tirzepatide or semaglutide muscle loss side effects, it's really due to the decreased sensitivity to insulin, which is ultimately an anabolic hormone, right?
Well, okay, so let me just try to maybe like clarify a little bit. So if you just go on a very calorie restricted diet, you don't work out, you don't do anything else, you are going to lose muscle mass. So a lot of the controversy that we have with people losing weight with these, everyone's like, oh, they lost this muscle mass. Well, you know what happens to anorexics? Guys, they lose muscle mass. Have you seen an anorexic? So if you don't, there are smart ways to use these where you don't lose the muscle mass. And if you have muscle stimulation through training, and you're adding in some testosterone because you're low, you're setting the muscles up for a situation so that when you do eat on the tirzepatide, whatever comes in is going to be, the nutrients are going to partition themselves more into the muscle where it's going to build the muscle, which is metabolically healthy. Not only metabolically healthy, but we want you to stay stronger going into older age. Like, what are the things that are determinants of kind of like longevity? That you can talk about like all of these things, but in general, how strong you are and how good your cardiovascular system is, right? Those are your two big determinants. Like, if you're weak, you're not going to do good going into old age. If your cardiovascular system's no good, your max VO2 is down, you're not going to do good going into old age. Those are kind of like your two things you want to try to maximize out. So you take someone, you put them on testosterone, you get them on the tirzepatide, you get put things into the muscle where they want to go, and so they work together synergistically.
I
Does that make
see.
sense?
Yeah.
So I
Well,
honestly, in some ways, this may be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but I think you should have people who are on these medications probably on testosterone, especially if they're low with symptoms. And most of your obese guys are going to have low testosterone symptoms when you finally sit down and talk to them about it.
I
And
think
your doc's like, oh, but you're 430, you're fine. No, he's not. That brother's not fine. Did you talk to him? Right?
okay.
So it's
So this is more of I guess, a social commentary. But do you think that our society in general has just been so accustomed to male behavior that is basically low T behavior that people just don't even think to talk to them? They just assume being
I
lethargic,
think
lack of
I
motivation.
mean I think that's part of it, right? We've all got kind of gotten used to it, and why are the testosterone levels so low? Well, there's reasons. I mean, like that are like totally make sense. For instance, like we're not like a we don't exist as roving bands of raiders and things. Like we're always having to make sure our testosterone's high because we're fighting tomorrow, right? So that stuff's not there. Thank God. I would not like to have to, deal with random roving bands of marauders, in the modern world. But then other things, the stress we have. Like when I say stress, I mean like, there's real stress, like things that like awful things maybe have happened to you, things at work, but also just like living in a modern world, fucking traffic, go to the grocery store. Like I had a post on X the other day about like how irritated I got someone buying 20 lottery tickets in front of me. Somebody's saying like just these little stressful things added up, our circadian rhythm gets all screwed up, and I don't know the best way to try and fix that or deal with it, but up before the sun goes up. I mean, that's almost all of us, right? Especially in the winter. So we don't see the sunrise, we're not watching the sunsets, we're not getting to bed when probably we should. And um all of these things then add up over time to really kind of like get at your metabolic system. And when your metabolic system starts going haywires, then you start running into these testosterone issues. And so it's all symptomatic of a metabolic issue. And most recently you heard, RFK get a bunch of crap about these mitochondria, and he's not sophisticated in his little sound bites, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, he doesn't have, no one has these like primary mitochondrial diseases. That's not what he said, right? We aren't talking about those weird rare mitochondrial diseases. We're talking about dysfunction on the energetic level, which is clearly everywhere. You know, take keto, for instance, right? Keto and carnivore, big right now. People are like, oh, when I got into keto and carnivore, I lost this weight. I feel better. Like I'm looking great. This was the answer. Sugar was the problem. Actually, no. If you have to completely remove a single macronutrient from your diet in order for you to look okay, you're not healthy. Like you can make yourself. I mean, here's the thing: if that's the only way you can get to like so your lipids aren't crazy, you're not having high, it improves your blood. I mean, that's so yes, you have solved that part of it by taking out a macronutrient, but you're not healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of,
Oh,
the common denominator is metabolic dysfunction.
and so my goal kind of with people is that I want to try to get them get the weight off, and then try to get them back into like, especially if I've got like a client who's like been keto carnivore. I got to get you back onto some sugar, brother. And we're not gonna do it super fast. But you need to start adding some of that back in with exercise, the things that so like then your body can like start using it again, start understanding, oh, this is another thing I can deal with. And once you fix the energetics part of things, then everything else settles out. So I it's a long, complicated, I think, process. And I think any of this stuff is, you you should expect to take a few years to try to get sorted out.
I think that's I think that's based patience and persistence and well, I mean, I like what you're doing.
Thank you.
I think you're obviously helping a lot of people who can't get that help from the healthcare system. And I've done enough episodes where we just tear apart the healthcare system, but you and I have talked about that as well. And I actually think that practices like yours, I don't think this. I mean, I have evidence to support it. It's just in the very early stages. that working doctors, not just pulmonologists, but I mean internists, primary care doctors, they're starting their careers in a direct pay cash model. Um,
Right.
and there's no reason that someone like you can't just be around the corner from me, and then you're just my primary care doc. We talk about everything, not just TRT, but
Absolutely.
pneumonia,
And
whatever, like accidents, everything. That's ultimately like that's what people want, and
they,
slowly but surely, people like yourself are giving it to them.
well, yeah, I mean, there's a market for it, or else how could I exist where I am right now, right? I mean, I currently employ two nurses and two health coordinators, right? It's um, I'm paying my rent. I mean, so it's like if this I'm buying the meds, and so like it's if this wasn't something people wanted, in fact, I don't know, it just seems so wild to me that the things that doctors want and patients or clients want can't be put together by the fucking pinheads, right? They're like, oh, well, we're these administrators. We got all this stuff. We can't possibly do medicine the way people want it done. We have to do it the way we're going to do it. And it doesn't make any sense. And no one's happy with it.
No, it
It
doesn't
sucks.
make any sense, and it's just I'm kind of. I mean, this is why. This is one of the reasons I left bedside medicine and went into pathology, which was probably good for my T levels. Because I don't know, I feel awesome as it
I,
is.
I, I I bet it is.
Yeah, well, it's just like all of the symptoms that you described, like that was me like 8 years ago. Like I was having a lot of that, and I actually liked a lot of aspects of my job as a Navy doctor. Like I wasn't nearly as stressed out as an ICU doc, where dealing with the sickest patients in the city or the county. Um, but yeah,
Well, and you bring up an interesting point too, because I strongly suspect if you could take guys who are low testosterone and said, all right, well, you're low now, brother. You're about to spend the next 4 years on this nice Caribbean coast, and while you're down there, you can eat the freshest food, you can sleep when you want, you can work out when you want. I want you to swim in the ocean every single time that you want, and we'll get back to you in 2 years. I bet you that brother might be cured, but that's just not an option, right?
yeah, it's
It's like
not an
you said,
option for working people, and there's not like a. It'd be great if we all, could hit this impasse in life and take a sabbatical. Like
yeah.
I hit the impasse while I was still single, so I didn't have a kid, so I had kind of the time to kind of put it in neutral and pivot and plan out the next 8 to 10 years of my life. But a lot of people, I mean, I was just lucky. I was in a
Yeah.
scenario where I could pivot. But a lot of people, it's like they already have kids. They already have a hour-long commute and a corporate job or whatever,
Right.
managing an entire life and a family.
I
Um,
mean, and so maybe we've given ourselves these golden handcuffs, or maybe they aren't golden for you. Maybe they're silver handcuffs, but they're still handcuffs, right? It's like you're just like, well, what do I do? Like you told me to be less stressed. All right, motherfucker. What do you want me to do? Like not have the boss I have, not have the commute I have, not have maybe there's like something you got a sick kid, chronically sick kid, like not have this chronically sick child. It's like, no, you can't do that. So like you have to meet people where they're at. And if you can't, I think you need to fuck off. I'm sorry. But
yeah,
I mean, it's like
yeah.
that's the problem with our system. It's like we're just like, no, you're gonna meet me where I'm at as the doctor or like as our system, and here's the rules we have, but it's nonsense. And so
It
I
is
agree.
nonsense, and it's like at the healthcare system level, it's taking the opposite direction. It's like you and I kind of know what people want. We just described it in direct care, concierge medicine. That's what people actually want. People want.
Right.
People are smart now, right? They have Google. They have, they can study if they're motivated. They can learn more about their physiology, and they would rather pay cash for somebody who meets their needs. And it would be a huge benefit if HSAs were expanded and they would cover things like yours, and it takes major legislative reforms to.
Although I saw that they're looking at a rule where they're gonna bring back catastrophic plans. Did you see that? Or they're
Saw
talking about it. I mean, it hasn't gone through yet, but like bring back catastrophic plans and let people use HSAs for direct primary care.
I saw that
So
post. I didn't. I kind of have this sine wave of interest on health policy. Like,
That's
like,
okay. I'm
what
the
I'm
same
saying,
way.
I mean, one guy
I
that I'm all about it.
it's like, yeah, I get interested, then I get mad. I'm like, ah. And I get
Exactly.
interested and I get mad, and I'm like, ah.
Exactly. And then I'm just okay. I'm turning my phone off for like 48 hours. I don't want to talk about any of this.
But it's just been so disappointing because they had a chance to actually do something real with this, the big beautiful bill, and they clearly just like are in the tank for pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies. That's never going to fucking change. So we have to just be like, look, we're done trying to change that. We got to do our own thing over here, and they can respond to us or not. I don't know what I I guess whether they responded, they probably try to like shut it off because they want their monopoly. But I'm just saying it's like, but we have to. But I think if you build something that people want, there's a market. There clearly is. I think there may be like a critical mass there that they can't stop this now. So
I mean, I try to. I guess I try to focus my thoughts more on delusional optimism, even if I'm wrong. And there'll be some like piece of shit on the timeline that try to dunk me, and like
yeah.
there's always some boomer that comes in with like, no, no, you're wrong. You're NPs and AIs are gonna run medicine.
Oh, I hear that all the time too.
It's like, okay, dude, look, I see the exact same things that you're seeing. Like all of us that have come up through this system, we've all worked in a large corrupt health system at some point in our careers.
Yeah.
The lucky ones find a way to get out, and more power to them. Like we should be, egging them on. That's what we should be doing.
Yes.
Encouraging, motivated people to take a little bit of risk to actually do what you wanted to do when you started medicine. That's a good thing. And,
Yes.
a guy that I talked to, Heath Vuleman, and he's a ex hospital administrator. We did a podcast a few weeks back, and he made a really good point, and I think you would probably resonate with this, is that the death of medicine as we originally envisioned it, meaning our generation kind of idealistic getting into this, it wasn't killed by outsiders. It wasn't necessarily killed by insurance companies and corrupt hospital corporations. It was actually killed by physicians themselves. So we can't get them
Hmm.
all, right? You have like this
Oh my gosh.
germ of personalities that are just always sabotaging each other. And it's true. Man, can't argue with that.
Mm.
They're too busy squabbling with themselves instead of actually supporting, young brothers and sisters who who want to do something different and who want to start their own small business and make it work. It's the so. But I think that
Well, in my kind of like greater vision on this, and one of the things I'm having to learn a lot with, doing my own thing, starting a business, is that you just do not wait in a hurry. But I do eventually would like to get, some a direct primary care attached to this. It'd be nice to work with some of the other independent docs in town to try to put together our own little cash-based system, right?
hell yeah.
And so we can have our own little referral network. We can take things completely outside of the of any of the systems and just, give people good deals, right? If it's like let's say echocardiogram. If I'm one of the local cardiologists, and some of these cardiologists are now moving into their own private practices again, which I thought is interesting. Um,
And they
you
can
know,
they
I
can offer you a much better price.
oh yeah, because I mean it would be kind of nice to be able to get like every couple of years get an echocardiogram just to make sure you're not dealing with any left-sided ventricular hypertrophy. It's a rare but not not completely unseen phenomenon sometimes with the anabolics. Usually using too much, more than you probably should have been.
Okay.
But but it's one of those things where like you'd be nice to be able to not have to say, hey, let's go. You need to go to the back to your primary care to get a referral to the. Because what's interesting is like a lot of times these healthcare systems won't take like these little clinic referrals. I mean, like they get sent, but they just kind of get ignored.
Oh,
So it's
okay. Here's my prediction for you. I think
yeah.
in the next 12 to 24 months, there's probably a primary care doc somewhere near your location that is lurking and is reading the stuff that you write about, and he's like, he or she probably wants to do a joint venture at some point, and that's going to manifest. Because the demand is clearly there.
Oh, it's clearly there. So, and one of the things that sometimes you'll hear is people talk about like, oh, well, there's no equity in direct primary care, right? Because you have to be able to have like millions of dollars in order to spend this. And look, some of your more famously advertising, let's say celebrity direct primary care, $5,000 a month. That's not usually what it is. Most of your direct primary care is anywhere between 50 to probably like $100 to $120 a month. And you're going to get so much more value out of that than you will by throwing your money at insurance premiums, which don't cover anything until like you hit your deductible, right? And even quote good insurance now, once you hit your deductible, like so basically you have no insurance till you spend $5,000,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, basically. It's wild, man. And yeah, there's you probably heard of them. There's a crowdfunding. There's basically a company called Crowd Health.
I've seen it, and I've kind of looked into it a little bit. I've heard some people have been happy with it. Have you had any experience with it?
I've just been reading about it, and
Hmm.
I DM'd the CEO a couple times trying to get him on the podcast because the concept is clearly working. I mean, the guy like they started like 3 years ago, and they already have 10,000 members. And I've listened to a handful of podcasts with him on it. Like he's very vocal, he's very front facing. His name's Andy
Hmm.
Doonover, and like he talks about some of the really expensive cases that the crowd is able to fund. It's basically a catastrophic insurance plan. You pay into it like 80 to $150 a month, and
Hmm.
basically, but there's criteria. Like you have to be under a BMI of, or I think you have to be under 300 pounds, depending on body composition. So there's waivers for bodybuilders and stuff like that.
Sure.
And then you can't smoke cigarettes. And there's like one or two other like kind of common sense criteria for somebody who's even remotely interested in being healthy. And and then they have like flat rates for childbirth because I think it's a lot of young people like under the
Hmm.
40 or under the age of 50. Yeah, I mean younger demographic, so obviously their health expenses are a lot less than 50 plus. um
Right.
but I think they have it's like $3,000 per birth, which that's not bad.
Yeah.
um so anyways, it seems like uh the early experiment is working. Like the customers really like that model, uh,
Hmm.
and it sounds like they're upholding their end of the agreement. So I'd be really curious if a similar model would be replicated by like a crowd funded insurance for an older demographic. Like people that have multiple medical problems, and
Right.
that's a little bit more representative of what medicine actually is.
Good question. Yeah, and I just because those are the people will need resources at some point. So
Yeah. But anyways, I want to be respectful of your time, man. Coffee
yeah.
Black MD, the pulmonologist, also gym enthusiast, and the jacked pulmonologist. But thanks for your time, man,
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me back on, and we should do it again sometime.
for sure. Hope you liked that last episode with Coffee Black MD. You can find him at Coffee Black MD on X. If you like this podcast, subscribe. 3deepercuts.substack.com, at 3deepercutspod on X. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So until next time, stay healthy and stay curious. Bye-bye.